I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and here today with me is Thom Calandra of the Calandra Report and thomcalandra.com. That's Tom with an H. Thank you so much for being here online with me today.
Charlotte, for what, the 12th time, it's a pleasure being with you, via Zoom.
Yes, via Zoom, at least for a little bit longer, I think. I want to start off today by doing a quick recap of last year. And hopefully this is a fun question. I wondered if you look back on 2020 and you had to use one word to sum up how it was for the mining space, what would the word be and why?
Wow, that's a tough question. That's like asking a poet what his favorite poem is, uh, um, or a king what his greatest treasure is. One word. I would have to say cray-cray. The kids say cray-cray. Like as in the Bitcoin market right now is cray-cray. The commodities market in 2020 was cray-cray, crazy. And, cray-cray, I think, says it better than crazy, because cray-cray says that there's a whole new way of looking at this, and cray-cray is actually good. Or at least presently it's good, so.
Okay, I like that. Now, as we continue to look back at 2020 just for a moment, can you tell me a little bit about how your portfolio performed last year? Were there any standouts? Did you have any surprises? What was going on there?
Oh yeah, gosh. My subscribers and I were going through some of this with the reports that we send out here at the Calandra Report, and it looks like if you were to add up all of the published marks that I made on different investments in different companies as a group, and taken one or two of the big losers, which included a biotech company or two, I think you'll see, I think we said almost 40%. Now, personally, a 40% gain, which is manna from heaven, right? Because as you know, 2012 to 2018 was tough, and we can go into that in a second. And then surprises, oh my gosh, personally, our holdings here at home, which are definitely a seven-figure easily, we were probably up 50%, because we have a wider portfolio. Surprises, yes, I was, excuse me, I'm on a laptop. I was pleasantly surprised after holding shares of a graphite company that finally got caught up in the green movement. It got swept into green thanks to its CEO and its strategy. Nouveau Monde doing the Matuini deposit, New World Graphite, Nouveau Monde Graphite, and in Quebec. And it's been like an 8x, right? It's up about 800% in 4 months or 5 months, relatively. And that was nice to see, because that's an affirmation of the renewable energy market. So that was a pleasant surprise. I mean, if I were to go through the portfolio, I think we've seen plenty of surprises, both up and down. And some of them have had to do with exploration success in the minerals. Some of them have had to do with laboratories. Some of them have had to do with news about COVID and the novel coronavirus. So it's been quite a year. The other word I would use besides cray-cray is exhausting.
Right. And maybe you could talk a little bit more. You mentioned from 2012 to 2018, not such a great time in the resource space. Last year was a good year. How are you feeling overall? I've heard some people talk about, a little bit of hesitance about how the markets are now trending upward. How are you feeling?
Well, that's a feeling. That's a good relationship-like question. I'm not as nervous as I was uh, um, when things were terrible, right? Like take 2015 or 2016 when, the uranium prices were bottoming out, or, all of these gold companies that had soared were just getting demolished. Nobody was able to raise capital. I actually like investing then because unlike at least half of investors out there or more worldwide, I'm not a momentum investor. I don't like to buy things when they're going higher. I like to catch the falling knife, to rip off a hackneyed cliche. And of course, I always wind up buying here, Charlotte, and then it goes lower and I buy here, and it goes lower and buy here. I'm comfortable with that. I can hold for years, and I do, sometimes decades, and I do. What That's not what made me nervous. What makes me nervous a little now, just a little, because let's face it, it's a lot of fun making money every day. A lot of fun. Some of these returns just on a daily basis can be 3, 4, 5% of your entire portfolio. One day I woke up, it was, if I added up everything, it was an 11% gain in everything that we owned, in one day. So that makes me remember something that someone told me a long time ago when we were starting Market Watch, CBS Market Watch, FT Market Watch, and in the 90s and early 2000s, and we went public and the stock went nuts, I mean, really nuts. And one of my broker friends came in and said, I didn't see your name on the list after the 6-month window. Your options or your stock that you can sell after 6 months after your IPO. And I said, yeah, I'm holding out. And he said, what makes you the one person who thinks they're going to outsmart the market? You have a fiduciary responsibility to your family. And that can be good advice. I didn't sell, and I did very well, but I sold at half the price that it was 6 months afterwards. Still did very well because I was buying once again. Now I'm just wondering, a good analog here, could be the cryptocurrency market. I mean, I own some of the cryptos, mostly Bitcoin, Ether, Chainlink, and let's face it, when you look at a portfolio that might be worth $5,000, and you go to your Coinbase or your Gemini, I use Gemini, and like 4 weeks later, it's worth double that, right? Because of Bitcoin and Ethereum. You have to be one of those people who say, there are people out there who own a lot more of this stuff than I do. I wonder if they're selling so that they can buy their third $1 million home. Or if you live here in California, $3 million home. You see what I mean?
Yeah, and maybe you can talk a little more about your strategies when you invest in a company. I know from previous conversations that you do a lot of due diligence. You like to know the management. You want to visit the property if possible. But on a day-to-day basis, are you really doing any trading, or are you simply doing the holding that you had mentioned?
No, I'd say in the past 12 months, I'm good for probably on average a trade or two a day, whereas for years, it would be a trade or two a week, if that. So I as I tell our subscribers, I don't really like to go in and out. Once in a while now, because of the demands of the audience who think that they can all be Robin Hood, the reference there, right? Robinhood.com. I give them hey, this might be good for a trade. This lab stock might be good for a quick trade, or this company's shares are so depressed, but I'm pretty sure they're going to have drill assays out next week. This might be a quick trade. And I do that once again because they're, even though we have knowledgeable subscribers, and right now we have a lot of them, some of them still like the juice, the daily action. So I'd say right now, for example, today, we're just today. I mean, I don't want to, go off and quote Keats or Blake or any of these great poets that I had to study when I was young before I got into investing and geology. But, if you look at what Keats says, time, that aged nurse, rocked me to patience. Time, an aged nurse, rocked me to patience. Well, look at Ivanhoe today. Today, for the first time, Ivanhoe Mines, which I've owned since 2003. How is that possible? This is the Africa version of Ivanhoe Mines, because I bought it as a private company from a shareholder after seeing what was at the time just platinum. Now, of course, it's Kakula and copper. It's over $6 a share US. 17 years later, 18 years later. So yeah, I mean, I've been selling a little of that to pay bills and keep the kids who are finished more or less. I think 1 or 2 more quarters, keep them in school, pay property taxes, which are insane around here. That's a long time, Charlotte. That's decades. And I think that, you can say that about a lot of things, small and big. I mean, Ivanhoe Mines with Kamoa-Kakula and the Platreef Platinum is now an $8 billion US company. So that's fairly significant, right? From a company that was worth next to nothing. But there are plenty of examples. Also, xtra-gold is one that I've been very attached to for about 12, maybe 13 years in Ghana. And I'm very close to that company. And as with Ivanhoe, I've been to their flagship project in the Kibbe numerous times. That thing is up 10x, right? But I was down 90%, or 80%. If you were to take a snapshot of 2018 or 2017. So let's not forget the influence of time on our lives, on our investing, on our relationships, because once again, as Shelley said, Shelley the poet, the more we study, the more we discover our ignorance. There
And
you go.
on that note, what junior resource stocks will you be watching most closely as we head into 2021? You mentioned a couple of names. What are you
Oh, I
thinking
have,
there?
yeah. I mean, I'll try just to stick to stuff that we've reported on and researched at the Calandra Report. But one that actually I'm buying more today is clean tech. I mean, look, gold has been terrific as someone who helps me, guides me in terms of the large bodies of knowledge and also BS that's out there from mining companies, and helps me navigate my way through it. He's a young fund manager in San Francisco, Matt Geiger. We love gold. I mean, all in gold until that day comes when I'm no longer me. But in the meantime, there are other interesting opportunities: platinum, nickel, graphite, as I mentioned, even though the graphite price hasn't moved, uranium, which is having a huge run, as you know, Charlotte, right now, the uranium equities, not the uranium, the metal. Copper, I love copper. So on nickel, I've been looking at and buying Clean Tech, which is in Australia. And it is not just a nickel company. By the way, it is part of that Ivanhoe Capital framework of companies. But it's mostly because, trends tend to last a while. And if the green trend continues because of politics, because of renewable energy, because of maybe oil prices, if the green trend that we're all getting swept into continues, then nickel is going to be one of the most important metals, one of the most important commodities, but also water. And clean tech doesn't just have what looks to me like a an admirable holding there in Australia, but it also does water technology for clean water and other technologies. And I like that. And I think it's well run, and I don't think there's any capital problem raised there. And then of course I'm very close to companies in Nevada, Arizona. I've been moving a little more toward producers, a little more toward gold and silver producers, which is very unlike the Calandra Report and me. And that's because look at the income that's coming in now from some of these companies. The large ones are the ones that everyone's aware of course, the big five or the big six, Barrick, Newmont, Agnico, Eagle. Their cash flows are surging because of the gold price and the silver price. And so, I'm on the hunt for cheap or relatively cheap small producers. Of course, don't remember if you were there with us. Were you there at the Eagle Gold Mine? But you know Victoria Gold's Eagle. So I've been there a few times, and they're a producer, and they have commercial production, and they've been in production for about a year and 4 or 5 months. And I think John McConnell and Paul Gray and his team have done a tremendous job. So I've been buying Victoria Gold there for its Eagle Gold Mine. I've been buying Northern Vertex Mining, which is a small producer in Arizona. I've been buying Premier Gold, which, as you know, Ewan Downey's Premier Gold got merged just the other week, or it will merge into Equinox. And something new that Ewan, whom I trust almost like a brother, actually, if we're going to compare siblings with executives, anyway, they're spinning out. And if you own Premier, besides your, the 2 separate companies that you get, you're also going to get a company called I-80. Interstate 80 is the highway that runs through much of Nevada and much of the Carlin, and Premier is the gold producer, and there is quote unquote upside with other stakes that it owns. So I'm always on the lookout for cheap producers. Another one in South Africa, Pan African Resources, just started its ADR, and I know Pan African from someone who helped me out greatly 10 years ago in the nation of the Republic of South Africa. That's been a good one. And there are 1 or 2 small producers as well. I'd have to go through my list. So, there you go. I think also there's room here, Charlotte, for intense speculation, because if this melt up continues, it's not just going to be mines and metals and lumber and steel, and it's going to be tin. It's, as I said, it's going to be tungsten. We talk about uranium. I was just on the phone with Jordan Trimble. Jordan probably from Sky Harbor Resources. And companies like that, even though I don't own that one, I might as well talk about it. Companies like that still haven't made the leap because of the interest in uranium equities, probably will make that share price leap eventually. And I think that, mostly I feel comfortable holding some of these intensely speculative small companies. And I'm starting to mature a little, as I said, and buy slightly larger companies. And I'll leave you on this note, or you feel free to ask 1 or 2 more questions for sure, Charlotte. But I've been buying a metallurgical coal company in the Appalachia, which is here in the United States, Kentucky, West Virginia, based in Indiana. American Resources trades on the NASDAQ, AREC, and they're fascinating because of their not just the fact that they're a very socially responsible, aware, careful, clean miner of met coal, which you need to make steel. You need to make specialty steel products. But they also have a couple of other units that look like they're really busting out here when it comes to infrastructure, the demand for infrastructure, especially in countries like India, China, parts of America, even Canada. Everybody's building, building, building. So that's been good. I think it's still cheap, but it's not a $20 million market cap or a 50 million. It's probably 200 or $300 million US, which for me doesn't, to you, it may sound like that's a small market cap, but for me, someone who invests in 10 and 20 and $30 million companies and parties when I can find one that's worth $5 million, it's, looks good.
Well, speaking about, you're talking about this melt up and what could be coming. What do you see happening in the broader market? Where are we going there? Just in general, how do you see that in 2021?
Well, Charlotte, I'm so, about 5 or 6 years ago, I realized how terrible I am, and many people are at forecasting. The macro trend, as my wife might say, I wouldn't know a Mack truck until it hit me in the face when I stepped in front of it. I'm not very good at the macro trends. I tend to be way too early, but I'm patient. Like I said, like Keats said, like Shelley said, like Blake, the great poets, be patient. Everything comes around, everything returns at some point. Now, I do see smart companies taking advantage to raise capital, whether it's in biotech, the COVID fury and announcements there. And I do see mineral companies and mining companies taking advantage of the green label or just the rising commodity prices. So I am aware that there is a lot of vaporware out there, the word we used to use in the 90s and early 2000s for meaningless press releases that move stocks billions of dollars anyway. So I'm aware of that, and I think that we'll probably see more of that, whether it's legit or it's surreptitious or not, through these ATM at the market transaction vehicles and so on that allow companies to raise on more or less on news, good news, I imagine. I'm happy when I get a call from someone like my friend Wes, not just a friend, but a terrific gold miner with a great past and a young person too, from Wyoming, saying, I have a company and we're really doing a great job. It's like, hey, I was just in Wyoming visiting our family. How come you didn't tell me? That was Visionary Gold. So that was a $5 or $8 million company. It's a little more now. And I said, okay, I'm in. I want to see this thing outside of in Fremont County there in Wyoming, and then I'll buy the Yellowstone DVD with Kevin Costner and watch it while I'm watching your stock go up, I hope.
Okay, last question, and then we can wrap up. This is one that I'm asking to a lot of people. Best advice for investors for the new year. What would you recommend?
Wow. I guess if you're really consider yourself an investor and you know what it takes to stick it out, whether it's 10 months or or a year or 10 years or 20 years, I would say really your only insurance is probably buying as cheap as you can. Now, there are a lot of things coming down the road. Very few people can predict them. I don't know if they're black swans or white swans, but I can say that in mining, we'll see innovation that will probably take stocks multiples higher. I think in biotech, we're already seeing people appreciate biopharma because of COVID, right? And because people are aware now of how fast things can get done, when there's a reason. And so these added multiples, some of the transactions, some of the M&A have been terrific. Probably a good harbinger of what's ahead. So I try to carve out a little more of your cash or your portfolio for an intensely speculative part, whether it's biopharma, mining, steel, it could even be media, right? And, as you know, I tend to own a lot of these, and most of the names that I've mentioned just now, I own.
Okay, well, thank you so much for helping us wrap up 2020 and kick off 2021. It was great to talk to you as always, and I appreciate the time.
Oh, it's been a great pleasure, Charlotte. Thank you very much.
And once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and this is Thom Calandra.